Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ABC of Paranormal Strangeness with Renata Daniel from Newcastle Ghost Tours and Anne Rzechowicz of Oz Paratech as I try to get rid of this wonderful banner that I have up here at the moment. Here we go, I'll get rid of it. Is it gone?
No, it's still there.
Oh, it's still there, okay. That's better.
Hey,
oh, geez, we're very washed out tonight, aren't we?
Mm.
Oh.
Go back.
Go back, that's better. Hello, heidi ho, everyone. Running a little bit late getting on. I was just trying to organise our special guest, our very special guest. We're going to move our 1.5 away. Keep moving. You can see all my shit out the back there. Could be worse, it could be real shit. Yes, tonight is brought to you by the letter Q. Let's see if we can get that to focus properly. Yes, it's focused on me nicely. And we are going to be looking at Q Station Manly and quantum, now what did you say?
Mechanics.
Quantum mechanics. Now, we have to admit, when we are out of our depth, quantum mechanics is one of those moments that we brought in a special guest, and that special guest would be our tame engineer, Roman Rzechowicz.
Our tame engineer.
Well, as tame as we can get him. And he is the other half of Oz Paratech, paranormal investigator. So he's
a silent partner.
He's having his dinner at the moment. I can see he's down there ready to go. He's playing with the screen so he can get it right. He looks an absolute mess. He needs a haircut, Simeon, if you're watching. And well, we're going to kick off first off tonight with Q Station Manly.
Okay, all right. Well, let me do my little doobie thing.
Oh, sorry, she's got to get her doobie wackies up. I'm just going to say hello to a few people while we've got the chance. Wow, lots of you on here. Hello, Danielle. On first tonight, I see Mick. Hi, Mick. Who's saying hi to Danielle? Hi, Sherry and Danielle. Hi, Danielle and Jose. Where you girls? Hi, Naomi. And lol, tech difficulties. What have I done now? Please tell me it's working.
Okay. So I have pressed the record button and we are here for the first part of the ABC of Paranormal Strangeness. And tonight we are tackling the letter Q, which could be difficult, but it's not, because we have quantum physics and Q Station Manly. And Anne, you are really getting stuck into Q Station Manly, and I believe you worked there for a little while as the head investigator and paranormal investigator and researcher at Q Station Manly for quite some time.
Yeah, we were there for just on 6 years, under very many incarnations. We kicked off a very I think it was a world first, really, a style of tour at a haunted site. And that was where we would take smaller groups. So the maximum number we would have would be 16. We'd split them into 2 groups of 8. And one investigator would take one lot, one investigator would take the other lot. And we actually investigated. We actually got into the buildings and we used equipment and we recorded. But what made it different is that we analysed all the recordings and looked for evidence of the paranormal that we then presented to our guests who were investigators for the night, and they were there. They knew what happened, so they would have real experiences. And it was honestly the most wonderful job to have for 6 years. It was exhausting. Because we live in Newcastle, we were travelling to and from Manly, because Quarantine Station, which is now known as Q Station, is at Manly, Sydney. And the reviewing of the evidence, because each of the little groups would be broken down into smaller groups and they all had recorders and cameras, and it was hours and hours, and we would painstakingly go through it. And, you know, every single tour we got something. Every single tour.
Well, it was 18 people by how many hours
16.
were you there? 16 people by how many
4
hours?
hours.
4 hours. That's a lot of hours of listening.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly when it was spirit boxes and it's in your ear. Oh my God. Anyway, I want to tell you a little bit about Quarantine Station Manly. So the idea was that when ships were coming into the harbour in the early 1800s, sometimes there was illness on board the ships. So they had to find a place to quarantine people. And quarantine actually came from the Italian word of quattro, which was to do with the 40 days. So they were quarantined for 40 days of quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
So the North Head was the furthest away from the city of Sydney, or the town of Sydney as it was then, and they were trying to protect the population from contracting diseases that may have come from another country. So you're going to have to look after the things that happen there. Yeah, you're doing good there. If you've been on a tour at Kew, let us know. Which one did you do? Because there's so many that are there. So it was around about the 1830s, late 1830s, I think, that they found this nice little bay, and they were putting people in tents, and tents just weren't going to do the job. So eventually they constructed some sort of housing and things like that there, and as the different plagues and things came through, they had to make more and more buildings to house everyone. They had to make laundries, they had to make kitchens. People, when they arrived in the ships, were divided up according to the class ticket they had bought, except for one group, which I will get to. So if you were a first class passenger, you were housed in beautiful corners, had silver plates and things to eat off, and a chef to cook for you. Second class had not the best view, or actually they ended up with the best view, actually, second class, but smaller rooms, still a nice dining room. There was also third class, which is a bit like cattle class, where you all got thrown into the one area to eat together, but you had accommodation where you could sleep. And the last class, which is an embarrassment to Australia, was anyone who was not white-skinned. So it didn't matter what ticket you had bought. You could have bought first class. You would have been put into what they then called Asiatics.
Wow.
And you had very limited water. You weren't allowed to wash terribly often. You couldn't wash your clothing, and they were kept in tents at the side of the hill. They didn't even have houses, but it was when some of the other classes started to complain about the smell of these poor people that they actually built a long room, which then they stacked with pallets so that people could sort of sleep one on top of the other on top of the other.
That's a lot back like concentration camps.
Yeah, the concentration camp. That's exactly what it was like. Yeah. So there was a lot of Asians coming over for the gold rushes, and it became known as Asiatics. And it wasn't until, when was the White Australia policy lifted? In the 50s or the 60s?
Yeah.
That was lifted. But it was in operation from the late 1830s till 1984. Then the hospital started to get more capable of containing, well,
until now.
And there weren't as many infectious patients coming through, so they were able to deal with it. And interestingly, one of the places that we still work at, Prince Henry Hospital, mm-hmm. had a sister relationship with Quarantine Station Manly, and some of the nurses would work at both locations, which I just thought was wonderful. So, yeah, they were contained there for 40 days, and if anyone on their ship contracted a disease, even up to the 39th day, then that whole period of 40 days would start again.
Yeah. So stop complaining about your 14 days.
Although I think we're up to 40 days. Hey, wouldn't it be interesting to see if it is actually 40 days they've kept us locked down?
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Is it 8 weeks? Anyway, we'll do the maths later.
6 weeks is 42.
Yeah.
76 is 42. Mm.
So it is actually the 40 days of quarantine, more or less.
Mm.
How very interesting. Yeah, so I'm just losing track of where I was. Now, Q Station is quite famous as well for a lot of the inscriptions that are carved into the sandstone down the bottom, where shiploads of people came in and they shiploads, and they would carve the name of their ship into the rocks. Sometimes they would write down the people who had died on the voyage. There's a very famous one of some Chinese, I'm not sure if it's Cantonese or what it is, but the calligraphy, the script, and apparently it's describing the hell of being at Quarantine Station because it was an Asian population. They were just treated like animals. So
Danielle actually asked were there burials on the property.
Yes, there are. There was a couple of cemeteries. They started off first by burying some of them underneath the Asiatics. There was a downhill slope, and they buried a lot of the people there in the headstones until some bright spark realised that the fresh water was running down the hill into the stream, into their water supply, and washing all the contamination into it. So they dug up the bodies, supposedly, and moved them into a cemetery which is up the back of Second Class, and then there was another cemetery that was further down in North Head as well. So yes, there were cemeteries, and it was only recently that actually I think it might still be there, that if you go up into the second cemetery, that there is a squirt bottle with methylated spirits in it. So when you come back from the cemetery, you have to wash your shoes down because the soil underneath the soil there is still contamination from the diseases. So you have to be very careful. So the reason why North Head is because there was actually nothing close by. It was a long trek through the bush to be able to get back to Sydney town proper. I kept meaning to say that and I kept forgetting. It's also a very sacred Aboriginal site. And we had the pleasure of speaking to an Aboriginal gentleman who was telling us a little bit about what it was used for, and it was a place for a lot of ceremonies. If I remember correctly, it was the women. I could be wrong. I will double check on that. I can't see my notes there. But he was saying that to them it was like a nirvana, like heaven, but not in the Christian sense, but it was a very special holy place. And there is actually one place where I remember when I went on a tour at Q Station, just as a normal interested person on a ghost tour, we walked between Isolation and the Gravedigger's Cottage, and we were told we had to be very quiet and respectful as we go through there, as it's that is the Aboriginal sacred land, and if anyone was disrespectful, they had rocks thrown at them. I never had a rock thrown at me, but we were always respectful at any time we're at Q Station.
It's quite a spooky walk going up through there as well. Yeah.
So the history behind it. So once it got closed down in 1984. It was then handed over to National Parks and Wildlife to be part of the National Park of the Headland. So they turned it into a conference centre and function centre, and had the original ghost tours there before it was all done up and pretty. How cool would that be? I wish I could have done a tour back then. That would have been cool. And they struggled with the upkeep because they'd have to try and get money to be able to keep these buildings.
It's a huge site.
It's massive. It's massive. I'm going to do a rundown of the site for you shortly. But they just struggled, and they couldn't keep up maintaining the buildings, and some of them started to fall into disrepair. So they realised they had to do something. So then Moreland came to the rescue. Thank you, Moreland. They've done a fantastic job of, I've got goosebumps actually, of maintaining the integrity of the site. They've converted the first class, second class, and third class buildings into accommodation, 4.5-star hotel. And of course, the ruling is that there's no ghosts in any of the accommodation.
That's why they run ghost tours, because
But-
there are no ghosts.
No ghosts. No, well, the ghosts are in the other buildings. They're not in the accommodation.
No, none of them go anywhere. They stay in their buildings like good little ghosties.
I remember when Beth from Access Paranormal hosted the Kling brothers there. They had Brad and Barry come out to run a whole weekend of awesomeness.
It was,
Brad, went in to have a shower, and when he came back out, all his bag had been emptied and thrown across the room everywhere. The doors were shut. There was no explanation for what happened.
Oh,
and then
really?
he got really hot sweats, COVID-19. No, and he said he felt like he had one of the diseases that one of the people would have had there. So yeah, he had that whole experience before he even got to do anything. That was just arriving at the place. There's also underneath the first class building some really cool toilets.
Well, there is too. Been there.
It's a long hall full of toilets, and it's so spooky down there. People don't really know it's down there. I've had the experience over there of smelling what I could only call an old Italian man's BO. It was very definite stink. You know, when they eat all their garlic and it comes out through the pores of their skin. Yes, so Moreland then took it over. They've got the 4.5-star hotel. You can stay there. They've got fine dining. They're also collecting stories to maintain the history of, because there's still like great-grandparents and memories of people who came in on the ships and were quarantined there or who worked there. There's still photos out there. So they're doing a living history and documenting as much as they can, which I just think is amazing. And, of course, the ghost tours, which, I remember my first ghost tour. It was fantastic. A friend called Dean ran it, and they are such good storytellers. Their craft is amazing. They do a fantastic job. But what we did was slightly different. We were doing something called paranormal investigator. So we were actually teaching people to use the equipment and to analyze the evidence. And was it last year, the end of the year before that, they changed tact, and a couple of their investigators had done some paranormal courses, and they have now taken on a paranormal investigator style investigation. So our contract, sadly, it nearly broke my heart, but we finished up there. But there is still the opportunity to do that sort of experience. I don't think they analyze the audio like we did and presented it, but you still have the opportunity to go there and have some sort of experience. Now the
we wish, Danielle, but no.
But they do run. Well, we were invited back. We did Parakew last winter. We did a special event and we sold out within 24 hours. People still love us. We got invited back again to do this year's, but sadly because of COVID-19, I doubt very much that's going to happen this year. They are doing live feeds from their website, although they had a lot of technical issues there. So just keep an eye on the Q Station Ghost Tours site on Facebook. But the places we investigated were the hospital, the morgue, doctors and nurses, Gravedigger's Cottage, shower block, third class kitchen and the area underneath.
Doctors and nurses is now accommodation.
Yes.
So you can go straight into doctors and
Apparently
nurses.
It's a nice little apartment there now.
Yeah, have your own little ghostly experience.
And if you look up, Christy might be able to find the link. Philips Lighting it was. I did like an info commercial for them. And I told a lot of the stories, and it was actually filmed in the building where a lot of action happened, which is now one of the units. Woohoo! But I wanted to tell you some of my experiences of Q Station Manly and the things we experienced. There is so many. I simply can't remember them all. There is just that many of them. But in the hospital, now the famous ghost there is the matron, and she likes you to be respectful when you go in. So when we used to go in, we always would knock on the door, and I'd just say, "Hi, matron, it's Anne and Renata and Roman. We're just back again. We're going to bring some of our people in if that's okay." And we'd go in. And we had Pete from Appy that was there one night.
Yeah.
And we decided to do some Iraqu. Now, that was something that the Kling brothers used to do on Ghost Lab, where they would reenact a scene to try and get any energy that was there to be interested to join in as if they were still part of what was happening. So I was being matron and Pete was being a patient. And she was being a very naughty patient.
Can't imagine that.
She wasn't doing as she was told, so I was being very tough with her. And we had the recorders going, and when I played it back, clear as day, there is the voice of an Irish woman speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's really clear. And I showed Pete, she's going, that's not me. I said, yeah, I didn't remember you bunging on an Irish accent and doing it. It was amazing. We used to get lots of sounds of footsteps around the hospital. I remember being up there with another investigator on early days, and it was when the tour was finished. We're going back and picking up equipment. We walked around the veranda and we heard this on one of the doors, and it was a really still night. And I went, that's weird. I've gone, okay, if that was you, matron, do it again. Okay, run away. I don't run anymore. I actually run towards it to work out what's happening. We also had with Pete yet again, there was an experience with this weird shadow, and Roman was there with it. Were you there when we saw that one?
No, but I heard about it.
Yeah.
I did hear about it.
So Roman was walking around the corner to go and do something, and we could see his shadow go across the wall, and then like there was he was going across and there was a shadow there. Then all of a sudden this shadow behind him ducked down, detached, and ran off in that direction. And Pete's going, hey, did you see that? Did you see that? I'm going, I saw that. I don't know what it was. Oh my God. It was a really freaky thing. And Roman didn't feel anything, but it was this, it just looked like his shadow, but it detached and scuttled off.
Wow.
That's wow. So I get very excited about Q Station. It's one of my most favourite places. So also, we had another experience where we had a medium come up, and she was telling us that there was a child that likes to hang out in the cupboard of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And she said her name was Rebecca or Rachel. I can't remember what it was. And she actually climbed into the cupboard to talk to this child. She gave us all this information. I think she was saying that, her mother and father had died. Her brother was still alive. And she was frightened of matron because matron kept wanting to give her needles. And like this, I knew this medium, and she was amazing. I had faith in her. I believe her. I don't think she's the sort of person that would bullshit about this stuff. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, we had Dave Schrader and Bill Chappell come there as part of a special event for Paracon. And Bill Chappell bought his SLS X-Cam, which is a structured light sensor camera. It's the one that maps them as stick figures that you see on Ghost Adventures. So Dave took the camera over to the cupboard. We opened up the cupboard, and lo and behold, in the exact part where this lady had said there was a child, was a child-sized stick figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just beside myself, and Dave's going, oh, wow, look at this. This is really interesting. I'm going, oh, my God, no, I have to tell you. So he's doing things like that. If that's you, can you wave your hand? Wave your right hand. Sure enough, it picks up its right hand and waves at us.
Wow.
It was interacting intelligently. Then a adult-sized figure popped into the other half, and the child disappeared.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So I just thought that was great validation of an experience from a story a medium had told us to a few weeks later actually capturing something like that on the SLS X-Cam. I tried to get the footage of that off Dave, but he took it back to America with him and wiped it. But that's okay. We forgive you, Dave. We love you. There's a bit of a sad story around the cliff of the hospital as well. The Manly Hospital is very close to Q Station, And there was one night that we arrived there and there was helicopters flying overhead with spotlight. There was police cars flying in and out of Q Station. And when we got there, we asked what was going on. And they said that one of the patients, this is a living patient, had escaped and had run for the cliffs because there's cliffs at the end of Q Station where a lot of them would commit suicide if they had the opportunity. And apparently that night they did succeed, which is very sad. Wow. But that's just another level of what exists at Quarantine Station Manly. You've got all these people who came in with hopes and dreams of a new place to start a new life with their family. And some of them, they arrived on the land, the sick ones were taken away and they never got to see them again. They died. Sometimes the children were left to fend for themselves or taken in and were adopted out. In Doctors and Nurses, there was a famous nurse that the guys like to talk about called Annie Egan, and her tombstone can still be seen up at the North Head Cemetery. And she apparently had only been there a couple of days, contracted an illness and died quite quickly. And all she wanted was to have the last rites said for her.
Yeah.
But because of the fact it's quarantine, and we are all learning about this now, aren't we? They wouldn't let anybody on to give her the last rites, and she died without the last rites, and apparently is a restless soul because of it.
Restless spirit.
But interestingly, it wasn't Annie we had a lot of contact with. It was somebody called Elizabeth. Her name would come through on the spirit boxes quite often, and she would talk to us. And it turned out that Elizabeth was Annie's friend who died around about the same time.
Yep.
Because the goosebumps again. Oh, I miss them so much. Now, another favourite place was the morgue. Now,
gotta love the morgue.
Interestingly, though, there wasn't actually a lot of bodies that went through the morgue.
No.
They knew what they died from, and they had to get them into the ground as quick as possible. So the morgue was always pretty dead for us. There's talk of the ghost Slimy there. We never got any evidence of Slimy whatsoever. But we used to get a female that would talk to us quite often, which was interesting. Gravedigger's Cottage, of course, everybody knows about the Gravedigger's Cottage. And once again, it was just a cottage that was left on site of an example of the type of accommodation the workers would live in. It wasn't actually necessarily the gravedigger that lived there. He could have lived there, but nobody really knows if it was the gravedigger. It was just families, but it became the urban legend.
Yeah.
And Samuel was the resident ghost there. And we used to get really unexplained EMF activity in that location. And for the first 4 years I worked there was no power to that house. And I even got to the stage where we got a big flashlight and sort of climbed around the edges of the house looking underneath to see if somebody had planted something that would be setting off the EMF, because it was just insane. But I did get an EVP there to back up the fact that there is a Samuel there, because I was saying something like, "Come on, Sam, talk to us." And I got corrected, and the EVP says, "Samuel." Like it.
But it's interesting in all of this and the amount of time that you spent at Q Station, and that's the wonderful thing about doing tours regularly at sites. You get to go back again and again and again and again and start to verify things that have happened over time.
Yeah.
So it's not like just once and you gather information from that one little moment in time. You're going back at different times, in different weather conditions, different times of the year, different seasons with different people, and you get to have this variety of experiences, some of which overlap, but in many cases they don't. And then you have all the people that come in with their biases and what they think and what they've seen on TV or what they've heard, and they layer in all of these stories, and then you end up stepping back and going, what was actually here before all of this started and all of these stories came on? What is the truth that underlies all of this?
And what has been created because the story has been told over and over and over. So it's a very interesting location because a lot of the stories are possibly stories. I'm not saying that they're false. It's just that there is no evidence to back up some of these historical things that supposedly happened. I remember being told about somebody who was murdered and dismembered in the bathtub and their body parts hidden in coffins. And we never got any evidence. We did have one gentleman see a man standing at the back door, and it freaked the hell out of him. The Gravediggers Cottage was normally the most active place. The hospitals, interestingly, became the place where we did the table tipping and seance work, and we used to get the most beautiful messages come through which provided healing for people who had lost loved ones. So the hospital was still doing what the hospital did, was trying to heal people.
But it's also too, what I think you found over time was that the most active spot wasn't always the same. It would change as time went on.
Yeah. And some nights you would go around the site and you think, oh my God, it's so dead tonight. They've pun. And there's nothing happening. But then you'd listen to your recorders and there'd be EVPs left, right and centre. And look, the shower block is also another very popular. I could have done an hour wholly on Q Station easily. The shower block is very popular. I know Jason Geisler, I think you had a photo that was of great interest of a very tall man with a hat. Actually, I think Julie took the photo, and Q Station does have that somewhere. We had a really interesting photo at the Gravediggers Cottage, but it looked like the face of a man looking through the window, but we actually debunked it later that somebody had pressed their face against the window and the oil had made the dirt stick to it. Third Class Quarters was famous for Isaac, and we actually did get evidence of a child spirit being there. We used to sing nursery rhymes and do kiddies jokes and things like that, and you can actually hear this child's voice going or laughing or making sounds like it was singing. So it was truly an amazing place. And we were lucky enough to work with Bianca Biassi, who has produced some documentaries from Q Station, and she has actually produced one with Renata, myself, and Roman in it, which the space between, which
hopefully out soon.
Hopefully, Bianca. What's happening with it? I know that they keep trying to get a little bit more from us. Can we just come back for one more bit of filming? Yep. Anytime, because we love Q Station. So, go and check out the tours that they've got there. Now, remember, if you do a ghost tour, you will be on a tour with up to 30 people, and they will tell you some awesome stories about the ghosts of Q Station. There's a few freaky little, I'm not going to give anything away because you don't do that. You don't want to spoil it for you, but it is a ghost tour. They have an extreme tour, which is a lot more scary with people jumping out and doing things, and a lot more gory sort of stories or sexual stories. It's 18 plus for that one. I haven't actually looked at the tours. I know they've got family tours.
They've got tours almost every night.
There's Bianca. Hi, yes, almost done, ladies, and feel free to share the trailer on here. So I'm just ever so grateful to Morland for taking on the project and looking after Q Station. Q Station is so close to my heart, and I will go back and stay there as a guest, just because you go onto site and it's like a healing. You just relax, and the kangaroos are eating around the place, and the kookaburra comes and sits on the fence, and the bush turkey chases you for food, and it's a beautiful, beautiful location. So get onto their website and check it out.
Yeah. And that will conclude part 1 of tonight. So please, everyone, hang in while we just finish off the recording for this particular session.
I could have gone on for a whole hour.
You
Meanwhile,
could have.
Roman has disappeared. Oh, there he is. There he is. He's coming back. All right. I'm just going to run out and get him in front of the camera. So you right to hold the fort there, Renata. Talk to people. Tell them about your experiences at Q. Roman, you ready?
Yeah, I was introduced to Q after quite a number of years of Anne working at the station, so I sort of joined the team to do some psychic and mediumship work, and it was quite enthralling to really make deep and powerful connections with the spirits that were at Q station. What is he doing?
I don't know.
I think he's coming in here.
No. You better not be.
So yeah.
There we are. There he is.
Hello.
Everyone, I'd like to introduce you to my husband, Roman Rzechowicz, our trained electrical engineer, control systems engineer. Not looking so tame at the moment. That hairdo is happening.
Yeah, that's what happens when you spend all day climbing through the engine of a large truck,
So
trying to find something that doesn't exist.
What do you do for a living, Roman? Just tell people what you do.
Can you just hold on
various
so I
days.
can record this?
Oh, hang on, Roman, hang on.
Okay.
Let's just do a little intro. Just hold on here for the folks who won't be able to see this live. So, Anne, we have someone that you know intimately right here with us at this very moment in time.
We do?
Yeah.
My husband, Roman.
Wow. And what's he good at,
G'day.
Anne?
Oh, you don't want to ask him what he's good at because he'll go completely off topic. My darling, so thank you for joining us on the Frightfully Good show and for telling us about quantum mechanics. Now, just so people get an idea of your background, what is it that you do?
Okay, depending on the day of the week, I could be taking care of pumps and valves for a fuel management system, or I could be designing electronics for stuff like a dump truck, a mine dump truck, to talk to a lube cart and say, I need this much diesel, etc. So I do programming, I do electronics design, yeah, and electrical design.
And I have to say that you are Bianca's favourite.
Mm.
You are the silver fox of the paranormal. Not tonight, though. Oh, there's Ellie Mae.
Oh, he's got his pussy. He's got his pussy. Come on, Roman, because we're losing people left, right, and centre.
We'll have more pussies shortly.
Okay.
All right. So tell us, what does quantum mechanics have to do with the paranormal?
I was going to get to that after I told you what quantum mechanics was.
Okay.
All right.
Go for it.
So we'll start with an engineering approach. Okay,
Oh,
about 120 years ago, people realised that things weren't exactly as they seemed. So they thought they had everything sorted out, and then people started doing small observations of small things and discovered that they didn't behave properly at all. So what they discovered was that things ended up coming down to something that was indivisible. So light wasn't just a flow of energy, it was little packets of energy firing through. And the more energy each of those little packets had, the more the higher the frequency of it. So you can have radio waves, which are photons by definition. You can have light waves, which are photons that we can actually see. And then you can go right up into X-rays and gamma rays. 5G phones use photons of electromagnetic energy. So the electromagnetic side of things is one thing that's related in the way we tend to do a lot of equipment. But the quantum mechanical side of things is something that I think lends us maybe explanations for what we're seeing as paranormal. So, okay, I'll start at the far end of things and come back. So what I believe is that weird things do happen, but I'm not terribly convinced they're anything to do with dead people in the classical sense.
Yeah.
So I think we've got stuff that's weird enough that we can prove, that we can measure, that we can reproduce, that's probably going to come up, be part of the explanation for what we find as paranormal things. So,
and this is what scientists want. Scientists want something that is repeatable
and measurable, and in the end, manipulable. Oh, am I going to get a visitation, Renata?
You're going to get told.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So what is your explanation of what a ghost is then? What are we trying to quantify when we're looking at this energy? And is it really an energy? That's the thing that I've been learning over the weekend, about what we classify as an energy may not necessarily be an energy. How did you get there?
She teleported.
It's quantum physics, my dear. Plug that in your hole, my love, and pop these in your ears so you don't get the feedback.
Echo. Oh, hang on, the ears are further down.
I'll go back to my other job now.
She'll teleport back. Okay, so what I suspect could be happening that would be an explanation would be something to do with time being relative and things possibly being able to slip in time. So even to the point where we might end up impinging on our own timeline from our past or our future. Sounds weird, but when you look at what actually happens with so the weirdest things, like Einstein and Niels Bohr and people like that came up with this, realized that this had to be true because they followed the evidence and found that what they came up with was the ability for things to have an action at a distance far faster than light or anything else, any other force could possibly travel between them. So light, as an idea, light moves about a foot per nanosecond. And the best experiments they've done so far, they get two particles, or create them together or entangle them together, and then separate them somehow, whether that's through optical fiber or beaming them using a telescope and a laser to a satellite or some other spot. And what happens is when they measure the particle that they've sent over there, this one that's entangled with it immediately falls into the exact opposite matching state. Yeah, multiple universes.
State. I always used to think they used to start doing the same thing. It does the opposite to it.
No, so one of the early things that they found and really helped chemistry, the physicists helped chemistry, was that if you get things that are together, there are only certain states that they can take up. So if you've got, well, for say a nucleus of an atom, if you've got one particle that's got spin up, so right-hand spin, that way, then if you've got another particle that's part of that, it's got to be spinning, having the opposite spin. So you can't have two in the same place at the same time with the same exact characteristics. So what they've been doing is creating these, and the Chinese have done something like 1,200 kilometers by bouncing. So they've created a couple of photons. They've sent one to a satellite, and that satellite has repeated it down to the ground to another station. And light would take maybe a hundredth or a thousandth of a second to reach from here to there. But when they do the measurements using really accurate atomic clocks to measure what's going on, really, really good ones.
Really good ones.
Yeah. they find that they're measuring things to better than a femtosecond, and these things are happening, as far as they can tell, at exactly the same time. So there's nothing in anything before 1900 that anyone could possibly explain that with.
So is this whole could be the parallel universe sort of theory where, or that split time shift? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, exactly the sort of weird things that can happen.
Yeah.
So
I'm just looking at Renata's body language. She's completely folded up, the legs across. She's going, oh no.
Eyes across.
I lost him when he started talking. I fell into the gap between your words, Roland.
Happens often.
Okay, Renata, you'd be pleased to know you are using quantum mechanics every day. Every time you pick up your phone, 90% of the stuff in your phone that does what it does wouldn't do it without us being able to reliably have things do weird shit. So one of the things is the transistors in there. They've gotten so small now that if you look at them as being able to pass or block an electron to pass a signal or block the signal, you are looking at something equivalent to, say, bouncing a ball next to a wall and trying to make it bounce over. And what they rely on it doing is that you bounce the ball without enough energy to go over the wall, but it still appears on the other side. If you want weirdness, have a read of some of the popular day-to-day renderings of quantum mechanics that people have tried to write, because it is weird. It is really weird.
What you want to talk about?
It is. It is weirder. It is weirder than a lot of the stuff that we talk about as being paranormal.
What is a ghost made up of? What are we looking at?
What is the definition of a ghost according to quantum mechanics?
It could be. No, well, okay. If you take the word ghost away from it, because ghost immediately implies you are talking about a dead person who's come back somehow.
So an entity.
An entity, okay.
Well, that's one definition. A ghost can be what is left behind, a remnant of something that used to exist but doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
You know,
time is relative, Renata. So you've just hit something where you're looking at things as being in a straight line time-wise, where time is the same for you as it was for that person who died, as it is for the bloke across the street. And the really sad thing is that this is what Einstein was famous for. He sat down and thought about it while he was going through his mind-numbing patent applications that he used to work on for other people applying for patents. And he realised that light had to go at a fixed speed for everybody. And what that ends up leading to via a series of steps, which I won't go through because it messes with my mind, is that
we've got no hope then.
is that time and space are relative. So what you see happening could happen in a completely different order for somebody else who's travelling at a different speed relative to you and relative to the thing you're looking at.
Oh, but that's just fucked. It really is.
It is, and it screws with your mind.
Is that everyone's reality is completely different.
Got it.
That is true.
It's just relative to them, and that's it.
Yeah.
Nobody else. Theoretically.
No, it's relative. It's relative to everybody else, but relative in different ways. So when you're talking about a ghost, okay, let's get back to that.
Yeah.
What you could be perceiving is the effect of another person, or even you, at a different time. And just because of there's something going on under the three dimensions of space and the one of time that we think we're stuck in. And the ability for something to happen a long way away in our three space might be like opposite sides of a sheet of paper. We think we have to go up and over the other side, but in fact the other side's there. Sorry, that's rude.
You're an engineer, it's expected.
Thank
I
you.
need a drink.
we have some good vodka now.
It's just that, like, if you're looking from the point of view as a psychic or a medium, and we have a something occurring that is sending through information, whether it be past, present, or future, and you are here getting that information, who's giving it to me?
It might just be there. So, okay, as far as we know, when the universe was formed, it was far smaller than anything I could possibly show you, and everything was there at that time. So there's nothing to say that when our universe came into being and expanded like buggery, that there are still not large amounts of stuff that are entangled from that time, possibly. So because they were crammed in together.
Is that like the string theory?
String theory's trying to explain it.
Right.
So stuff was entangled. So something that somebody did at another time or in another place.
It's just a bit being untangled.
Could be causing the bits of you that happen to be near the bits of them at the time that the universe was created, could be causing that to you to have an effect on them or them to have an effect on you. So you can't really send messages faster than the speed of light, because you've got to at the moment, we've got to create the entangled stuff and we've got to send it somewhere. So that still just happens in normal time. But it's when we measure it, the other end knows what's going on. So if you look at it in terms of the sheet of paper idea of we think we have to go all that way, whereas we only really need to go that far, it opens up so many possibilities that the normal thing of thinking of ghosts as being a leftover bit of somebody that was alive here and earlier is looking like the tip of an iceberg of what the sort of things that might be possible.
Now, I'm also interested, because I was doing a lot of reading on the weekend. Heaven help me.
Really?
And the whole S-box, spirit box thing. And when we have these programmable apps that have words and everything already programmed into them, right? And they're just playing while we are asking questions. You know those apps and the spirit boxes, and they have the and
most of them rely on randomness random generation of numbers somewhere.
Yeah. And like the theory of using those is that whatever energy or entity or whatever you want to call it can manipulate that to create words or sentences. Yeah. And we, as the listeners, make sense out of it.
We interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual fact, there's been psi experiments that show that a group of humans can influence a random generator.
Yeah.
And
nobody's really been able to explain it. And that the effect is not huge. We're talking about like a couple of percent, maybe over thousands of trials.
Yeah.
But the people have been seeing things that they can't explain.
So, are there entities that are actually
can manipulate that? Maybe,
possibly. Although I reckon the biggest problem is that scientists have got their definition of what they think time is. They've got their definition of what they think reality is, and they're sticking to that come hell or high water until somebody can.
That's the only framework they've got that they can measure.
Yeah,
and remember that's only about 200 years as well.
And they were wrong.
Of information.
They've been wrong before.
Well, can I just say something I realised years ago? I picked up a few copies of Scientific American, I think it was, just for fun, for holiday reading. And if you look at the back page, what they'll normally do on the back page is that they'll publish. They used to publish a story from 100 years ago and 50 years ago. They're now doing 200 and 100 years ago. And even in that time period, every time we as a civilization start to think we've got it, we know it all now, we get a kick in the ass, and we get immediately it's somebody goes, yeah, but why does this happen?
Yeah. And we seem to actually be going smaller and smaller to find the answers rather than bigger and bigger. Is that the way?
I think we're going in both directions. But yeah, look, string theory, the sort of stuff they're looking at to explain this, why there might be other dimensions that we can go step through rather than having to go around the ones we think we know about. They are.
If everything is made up of moving particles, there should be spaces in between everything anyway.
Well, yes, and space is
space between.
Space between, but space is potentially a thing in its own right. So when we talk about the universe expanding, it's not the stars and galaxies and gas and everything expanding into something. It is the space that it's in expanding. It's another counterintuitive thing. We got used to the idea that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, and then we got used to the idea the Earth wasn't the center of our solar system.
Well, look, there are still people trying to combat the idea that they're not the center of the universe.
Well, there are the flat ones still.
Carrie said, yes, there's a new theory with the confirmation of neutrinos and development of string theory that's got all of this explained.
Now we've just got to be able to test it, and we don't have a hope of testing a lot of it.
Yeah, can our energy or subconscious manipulate these devices? I believe it can.
Yeah.
Which is why we try to keep a blank mind when we ask a question. We all expect an answer, and by expecting the answer, we could be influencing the outcome. So you have to try and keep a blank mind.
And the other thing I try to keep in mind as well is, remember, we are not separate. If you get a chance to listen to Alan Watts.
I love Alan Watts.
Lectures. It's all a matter of perspective, and we're part of the whole thing. So,
well, if you go back to the very first
why couldn't we affect things, and why couldn't things affect us?
Yeah, well, if we go back to the very first thing that you were talking about, where we were all literally encapsulated in this microscopic little bit, and now what is happening is we're all untangling from each other into our own little space, but still there.
Still linked.
We are all linked. We are all part of this living organism that keeps on refreshing and regenerating. As we die, the new us.
Well, it's our job is to pass on our genetics to the next.
Yeah.
It all comes back to sex, doesn't it?
Sex
always comes back to sex.
Sex and worms.
Sex and worms, because we were worms, weren't we? Worms, sort of,
I thought we crawled in the sea.
Thingies. Well,
yeah, we are a support system for a gut.
And an anus.
Well, it's the duality of the whole thing. Mouth, anus. Some animals don't have any difference.
My American friends won't like me though.
I mean, there are. I can't remember whether it's jellyfish or what it is, but basically they take food in through here and put the poo out through here.
Yeah, that's about us.
What? I don't shit out my mouth.
Well, unless you got really bad gastro.
Now, we had some people who were asking about some places where they could find out some more information. Now, I know you watch a lot of YouTube channels. Can you recommend a YouTube channel for them to watch on this sort of quantum stuff?
Not a particular one, but there's a guy who has a channel called Veritasian, who tackles a lot of these sorts of things. He does a whole range of stuff, even down to sort of going through and showing why most published medical research is wrong. And it's so obvious once you see how he shows it to you. And it's all got to do with human nature. We tend to only want to publish the things that are groundbreaking and new and exciting. Yeah, and nobody publishes anything that retests that or finds the opposite result.
They wanted to confirm their bias.
And what was the other fellow that you mentioned before? That had good stuff? The name of the person that you recommend listening to?
That's all right. We can find them.
I can find them and put the
we'll
links
put
up.
links up on the page. Yes, Jose loves you. He wants you to do a whole show. The rest of us,
when I get time.
There is
I think that would be a really, really good eye opener for a lot of ghost hunters and a lot of people who think that they have everything.
Thanks, Jose.
All figured out, like we know what it is, because we really don't. And to have really good discussion and to have a discussion that can be, we
Alan
can talk.
Watts.
Yeah, Alan Watts.
Alan.
That
you can't spend your time in an echo chamber of people saying exactly what you're saying.
That's exactly right.
You don't learn anything.
Saying what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You have to be challenged.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're not growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to look. Sorry.
No, I'm saying even though we do this stuff that is really exciting, and if you want to be really, really 100% truthful, I don't know what's happening. I just know it's happening. I know it's happening. I know that bit of information has come into my head and I can tell someone a piece of information and they can verify it. But where that's come from and how it's happened and where I got it from, I don't know. That's the exciting bit about it. It's
the same as how much do you know about why the light goes on when you flick your light switch on?
Yeah, see, I'm the sort of person that would flick the light switch and go, oh, wow, look at that. The light went on. That is so cool. And not give it a second thought.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what most of the people are. I like to sit in the moment and enjoy the moment of what is happening around me rather than to try and analyze. Because once you start to analyze, it actually takes a lot of the joy out of what you do because there's an explanation. It's logical.
Oh, look, I think the really exciting thing is once you've gotten rid of probably the 90 or 98% of stuff that you can explain, you can reproduce, which it might still be paranormal, but it's not evidence anymore. Not if you can make it happen in non-paranormal ways.
Well, Roman, they've absolutely enjoyed having you on tonight, and they're requesting that you come back and do some more with us. So we might have to get you on again.
Yeah.
Maybe give me a couple of months so I can actually have some time to prepare.
we might have Roman segment the last 5 minutes or something of the show.
I think what we'll have to do is bring Roman on as a special guest speaker for our Australian School of Ghost Hunting for the people that go through our course.
Yeah.
So that we can open up some minds and open up some thinking, because that's what's desperately needed in the paranormal. A lot of people have just that same little vision, that little box of vision of what it is, and will not step out of that box because they don't want to be disliked. They don't want to say something that people are going to go, oh, how can you say that?
They don't want to be excluded from the herd. Being excluded from the herd means you die or something.
And the thing is, like you said, we won't learn and we won't really get to the truth unless we really pick at those bits at the ends that say, I've got to really upset a few people because we're not getting anywhere in this little zone of comfort.
I have a feeling that if I've gotten to the end of a day and I haven't learnt something new, it's sort of been a bit of a wasted day. So it's
he comes home from work and he puts on YouTube educational things and just absorbs knowledge every night. It just amazes me. I just want to get
it's just fascinating
on the lounge and watch something that makes my mind go numb for a bit, but he just keeps learning and learning.
But you've been sitting during the rest of the day, you've been sitting and studying as well, so
Yeah.
Different aims, but same sort of thing.
Finished my diploma of druidism. I'm on to my diploma of scrying now.
So you're gonna druid me tonight?
I don't want to know.
Oh
Thank
my
you, Roman.
God.
What image have you got in your mind, Renata? Is it a dirty one?
Oh, I can do this. I can mute him and he can't talk. I would just like to thank Roman very much for coming on tonight and hopefully opening up a few eyes, and we will try to get him on again. But he's my partner in crime, and when we investigate and we have Roman with us, it's always an awesome night.
Yeah, we have really got great discussions.
I'll put you back on, Roman.
That's a great thing about it. I love to be able to discuss with people all these bits and pieces, and I love my head being exploded and going, I've got no idea what you just said, but it sounds pretty cool.
As long as it gets you thinking. That's
right.
Exactly right.
Step one.
All right.
Exactly right.
We'll say goodbye to you, Roman, and we're going to finish off the show. So thank you everyone for joining us for yet another night. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next week is what? What's after Q? R. I have to think about what we're going to do. Rowdeeve. We'll have to do him.
Yeah, and reincarnation.
Oh, okay. There we go. Oh.
Now, guys, don't forget you have a couple of hours left if you still want to be part of our introduction to ghost hunting. There are still plenty of spots available. So head on over to the Australian School of Ghost Hunting and you will see the link to tomorrow night and you can purchase your spot. It's only $30 for 3 one-hour classes held over 3 weeks. And we have a bucket load of information to give to you.
So much, and I don't know if we can crack it out in an hour.
It just won't happen in an hour, but at least it will give you something. And what we can then offer from there are little mini courses on all of those topics that we can open up for you.
And also, if you have signed up to do the class, please make sure that you follow the link that was on Eventbrite to join up to the classroom, which is a private Facebook page called Introduction to Paranormal Investigation May 2020. You need to be on that page so you can do the class.
Because this won't be going on YouTube.
No, it's not.
It's only going
private.
to the people who have paid.
So it works out to be $10 a week. So it's a bargain. We figured we might as well do it cheap and have as many people on there as we possibly can to have a jolly good time together.
Yeah, and especially during COVID when everyone's lost their jobs and doesn't have the money, we can't make you. Yeah, we can't make you pay.
But we need to pay some bills too.
Also, we are going to do our next live stream from Maitland Jail on the 22nd of May, which is a Friday night. You will catch us back at Maitland Jail for 2 live streams, and that's Friday the 22nd of May, where we will lock ourselves in behind the gates of Maitland Jail and see what spookiness we can find.
And we'd also like to give a thanks and a shout out to our Grand Poobahs, our Parastalkers and Patreon supporters who help keep us going, especially in these times. So we thank you for your ongoing support.
I certainly do.
You'll get your special live stream. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you on the dark side.
Bye.
Bye.